So far, we have been talking about solving quadratic equations, and we used three methods so far to solve quadratic equations. Square root property, which you can only use if x is a perfect square or is part of a perfect square. The completing the square, we can use, but if you are left with messy fractions, that doesn't always give you an easy problem to solve. We can use factoring, but not every term is factorable, and not every quadratic is factorable. So, quadratic formula, this always works. Alright, the first three methods, they sometimes work, they sometimes are inconvenient, like completing the square. Sometimes things are not factorable, but the quadratic formula always works for any quadratic equation. So you can use this for any quadratic equation, and it's always going to give you a solution, or two solutions. Okay, so here's your first example. We got 2x squared minus 5x plus 3 equals to 0. The quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so let's start plugging stuff in. We have to know what our a, b, and c values are. So a is b, or a is 2, b is negative 5, and c is positive 3. They're the coefficients of the, a is the coefficient of the x squared, b is the coefficient of the x, c is the constant. Okay? So, what does x equal to? X equals to, forgot this, negative b, so that's going to be negative 5, b value is negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's going to be negative 5 squared, minus 4 times a times c, and all of that is going to be divided by 2 times a. Okay, let's simplify this. You have two negatives, this gives you a positive 5. Then you have plus or minus, negative 5 squared is positive 25. 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 3 is 24. So that's going to give you minus 24 all over 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, so far all we did was we plugged in these values into the quadratic formula, and then we simplified the square root. So you take the square first, that's going to be 25. Remember the order of operations. It's parentheses and exponent, so the exponent you do first. Then multiply, so then you multiply all these terms. Now you can subtract. So if I keep simplifying this, I'm going to get 5 plus or minus the square root of 1 all over 4. What is square root of 1 equal to? It's 1, because 1 times 1 is 1. So we get 5 plus or minus 1 all over 4. So what is this whole plus or minus thing? What's up with that? So the plus or minus means we're going to get two different solutions. We're going to get 5 plus 1 over 4, and we're going to get 5 minus 1 over 4. Okay, so 5 plus 1, that's going to be 6, and 6 over 4, that's equal to 3/2. 5 minus 1 is equal to 4, and 4 over 4 is equal to 1. So our two solutions are going to be x equals to 3/2, which is this one, and x equals to 1, which is this one. Okay, so the quadratic formula is a lot of times the easiest method to use for solving quadratic equations, and it always works. So when you are given a quadratic equation to solve, you can try to factor it first because factoring is sometimes easier, but if it's not factorable, this will always work out. Okay, next example. So we're still using the quadratic formula, and we want to solve the following equation. Okay, we want to solve 3x squared plus 6x minus 1 equals to 0. Okay, we got 3x squared plus 6x minus 1 equals to 0. Okay, let's solve this. Our quadratic formula is x equals to negative b. So let me write my a, b, and c values. So negative b, that's going to be negative 6, plus or minus square root of b squared, that's going to be 6 squared, minus 4 times a times c, and all of that is going to be over 2 times a, which is 2 times 3. Okay, so if I simplify this, it's going to give me negative 6. 6 squared is 36. Okay, now here you got to be careful. This is the most common mistake on quadratic equations. So if you are dozing off, pay attention. You have a negative 4 times a positive 3. So this gives you a negative 12. But a negative 12 times a negative 1 is going to give you a positive 12. All right, you got to be careful. If you have, so this minus sign, it's not a minus sign, it's actually a negative sign that's attached to the 4. So if you have a negative 4 times 3, that's negative 12. And negative 12 times negative 1 is a positive 12. So when you have two negatives as you're multiplying, remember your answer is going to be positive. And then 2 times 3 is going to be 6. If I simplify that, I have 36 plus 12, which is going to be 48. So this is going to be 6 plus or minus square root of 48 all over 6. Because you got 36 plus 12, that's 48. All right, another common mistake. So if you're not paying attention, pay attention. Common mistake. You can never, ever, ever do this. You can never, ever, ever, ever just cancel out the 6's. Okay, I'm going to repeat that because I see this all the time. You can never, ever, 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 ever just cancel out the 6's. Okay, why? Because this plus or minus means that this is one big term. And you can't ever cancel out just one part of a term without doing something to the other part. So this can't ever happen because of the plus or minus sign. It makes it into one big term. Okay, and you can't ever cross out just one part of a term. So this can't happen. So what do? Well, you first simplify the square root of 48. Again, a lot of ways of doing that. I'm going to write the 48 as 16 times 3 because I know that 16 is a perfect square. And square root of 16 is a 4. So this will give me x equals to negative 6 plus or minus 4 rad 3 all over 6. Okay, we got negative 6 plus or minus 4 rad 3 all over 6. Again, common mistake. Don't do this. Don't just cross out the 6's. If there's a plus or minus sign, you can never cross out individual terms. Okay, because this becomes one big term, you can't cross out just one part of it. All right, so what do? Well, can we add the negative 6 and 4 rad 3? No, because they're not like terms. Okay, so instead what we do is we're going to split this up. We're going to take the negative 6 and divide it by 6. We're going to take the 4 rad 3 and we're going to divide it by 6. So you split it up into two different terms. Negative 6 over 6, that's going to be negative 1. The 4 and 6, you can reduce that by 2. So 2 goes into 4 twice. It goes into 6 thrice, or 3 times, as you Americans would say. And this will give us plus or minus square root of 2 square root of 3 all over 3. Okay, so we got negative 1 plus or minus 2 rad 3 over 3. So, when you have a plus or minus sign, this becomes like one big term. In order for you to simplify it, you got to split those up as negative 6 over 6 plus or minus 4 rad 3 over 6, and then you can reduce it to be negative 1 plus or minus 2 rad 3 over 3. And that is a quadratic formula.